Hello and welcome to the Engaging People podcast. My name's Charles Rogel, a senior consultant here at DecisionWise. Today we're talking about the subject of innovation, and I have with me Thomas Olsen.
Hey, everyone.
Thomas is one of our consultants here at DecisionWise, and we're going to kind of tag team on this topic. So as we measure innovation with clients, we do it in a couple of ways. So a lot of times we're measuring this topic on employee surveys, and we ask a few questions. We ask it kind of at the team level. So we say, we ask, the people I work with openly share innovative and creative ideas with each other, and we ask that statement or propose that statement. We get 77% of people agreeing or strongly agreeing with that. We have a couple other questions. One, I'm encouraged to share innovative and creative ideas. Another one, innovative ideas are encouraged at this organization. That third question only scores 67% favorable or agree and strongly agree. So we try to measure it at an organization level, and we see various outcomes depending upon the company and their affinity for innovation. And then we also measure it within 360 assessments for leadership development. So there is a competency around innovation at the leadership level. And it typically scores the lowest out of all the 12 or 13 competencies on a 360 survey. And some of the questions or statements there are about out-of-the-box thinking, having good judgment about what creative ideas will work, and then creating an environment that encourages innovation, risk, and challenge. So those are some of the ways that we try to go about understanding how it's working in the company and with a leader. But Thomas, I wanted you to maybe talk more about what exactly is innovation and how does it kind of work?
Yeah, thank you, Charles. So I actually looked up innovation. I thought, we know about innovation and what's the actual definition of it? And so the dictionary talks about it as the introduction of something new, or a new idea, method, or device or product. And so there's this little example of, the telephone, that was an invention. That was something that was invented. Mm-hmm. The cell phone, you could probably call that an invention, or that kind of creeps over into that innovation area. And then the smartphone was an innovation. It was taking the cell phone and just kind of adding, functions to that. So.
So invention versus innovation, you're saying?
Yeah, invention versus innovation. Yeah, and I think, I'm just thinking back a little bit on my my career and my work experience. And I don't think innovation necessarily has to be this, huge, scary thing, or this, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. One of the things I think about is when I worked at Sears as an analyst, I was doing these forecasting. Every Monday I had to pull this big report from different systems, and I had to forecast our inventory for the U.S. And it was not just me that was doing that. There was about 10, 12 other analysts that was doing that in my department. And we just spent hours doing this every Monday. Yeah. And so I developed this inventory forecasting tool in Excel that just automated a lot of the reports, and you could easily just pull a report, paste it in, and it would kind of spit out this forecast for you. And so that saved everybody, hours every Monday. And to me, when I looked at it back then, I probably didn't think like, oh, that was super innovative. But, looking back, I think that's what innovation is a lot of times in companies. And I think when we measure innovation on these engagement surveys, those are the things that we look for, is those, we want our employees to come up with those little things that add up, and those little things that just change the day to day. Yeah,
because it's not like we're saying, oh, you have to kind of act like a advertising agency, and have all these creative people there, and everyone's like riding around on skateboards, and there's crystal balls and stuff hanging from the ceiling. You picture kind of this wild and crazy creative atmosphere. It's really small kind of progress improvements. Everyone, kind of has ideas. Do we openly encourage that and share those ideas?
Yeah. Well, and I think there are companies obviously out there where innovation that's what the company does. Yeah. Right. So Apple has to keep coming up with new products. They just had their unveiling today, and there's a new iPhone watch, but there's nothing super new out there, right? And that's their challenge, is they have to come up with
the next great thing,
the new iPhone, the new iPad and things like that. So, when I worked at Polaris, they were innovating on motorcycles, racers, rangers. But if you're not in that department, if you're not an engineer, you can still be innovative. You can still have an impact in your department or in your area of work. So if you're in finance, you can still figure out ways to do things differently and more effectively.
Right. So what does innovation look like when it's not working in an organization?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, I think, if you just have a very busy day and if you don't have, there's just not a lot of time to think about innovation. There's not a lot of time to think about how to do things more effectively or differently.
Sure.
And maybe there's not encouragement from your leadership or from your manager.
Yeah, it's kind of like, this is how we've always done it. It's not broken. Don't try to fix it.
Yeah, and I think that mentality is definitely there in some companies. I think most companies want to have a culture of innovation, but it's just how do you get there?
How do you cultivate it? Yeah. And so, what are some ways then to try to encourage greater innovation in an organization?
Yeah, good question. I think about this this business case that I had at my MBA program, where we talked a lot about Toyota.
Yeah.
Toyota came up a lot in my operations class, and Toyota has had this culture of encouraging employees to stop the production at any time. So they had this Anden cord. It was basically this long cord that was hanging in the ceiling all along the production floor.
Yeah.
And if an employee saw a problem or an issue with something, they could pull it, and it would stop production, and they would, a manager would come out and they would talk through it, and they would figure out what's wrong, and they would fix issues up front.
Which is kind of a big deal, because you're talking about a production line that could be 100 yards long.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to really be sure when you stop it. But it was part of their culture, and it was, these people were kind of encouraged to do it. And so when people did it and they found issues, people would be rewarded for it.
Cool.
And so Toyota still has that. They now have buttons. They don't have this cord anymore. I guess it became a safety issue. Having this cord hanging, so now they have these buttons that they can move around. But still, just that concept of you guys are encouraged to stop and think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And
the other
and I think the other thing I thought about is companies. A lot of tech companies, they'll have these hackathons where they they spend a day with mostly their software developers, and they'll try and come up with new little apps or gadgets or widgets or things to improve the business or improve how they do work. And I think that's something that we could copy in other areas of the company, where you have this kind of day where you get together with your function, or as an HR function, maybe you get together for a day and you spend time thinking about in different groups. You brainstorm, you think about the status quo and how you can disrupt it and how you can, maybe do things a little bit differently.
Sure.
I think that would be just an interesting thing to do.
I was thinking of two examples myself. So one client I worked with, they had kind of an innovation program. And so people actually got bonuses based on the amount of change that their suggestions brought to the table. But it was a very formal kind of program. You had to kind of write up your proposal, your proposed change, submit it. It would get reviewed, monthly or whatever by a committee. And then as they found ideas and solutions and they implemented them, then you would get rewarded. There was some kind of bonus tied to it. But the problem with it was it took a long time. And so, it took if you found a problem, you could develop this plan. It might take you a couple of weeks to write it up, put it together, submit it. Another month to hear anything back, another couple of months before anything was enacted. And so you never were quite sure if something was going to happen. So it ended up kind of being demotivating for employees because it was just too slow in a way. So the idea was, well, how can we innovate faster and create smaller wins and recognize and celebrate those as well, as opposed to big things, that might save $1 million in the company. And then another good example was another company we work with, a bottling company, where they have a 360 with a competency specifically around innovation and empowering employees, and really encouraging employees to come up with ideas of how to improve processes, procedures on the production line. And so you're talking about people that are, bottling water, essentially, always looking for innovations, ways to make the machines more efficient. Managers encouraged to empower their employees, and so there's not very little micromanagement that goes on. And so it's very empowering for employees, very engaging for them to participate and help improve their workflow, their experience, and contribute to the company overall.
No, that's really interesting.
So what other kind of tips and advice would you give to either the organization or managers themselves on ways to improve innovation?
Yeah, sure. So I was reading this article from the Harvard Business Review. It's one of my old professors, actually, Jeff Dyer. Him and Clayton Christensen and Hal Gregerson, they deal a lot with this innovation. So the Innovator's DNA is a book they've written. Innovator's Capital just came out, and they have these 5 discovery skills that they talk about. And so the first one is associating, and this is really just the ability to connect seemingly unrelated questions or problems or ideas from different fields. And so one of the things they talk about is, the founder of eBay, he really just, he was looking for a way to make markets more efficient. His wife was a Pez dispenser collector and couldn't find the, rare Pez dispensers on local classifieds. And so that was part of how he came up with eBay, is he wanted this marketplace where you could, find these kind of items, and he felt like local classified ads were not effective, and they would just encompass, a small part of the population.
Sure. Pez dispensers, it's amazing. I never knew it developed Pez dispensers.
Yeah, I'm not a big collector myself. Yeah. Thought about it, but the second one is questioning, and so really asking, if we did this, what would happen? And so kind of always asking questions.
Challenging the status quo.
Yeah, challenge the status quo. Are we, why are we doing this? How could we do it differently? What would happen if we did it this way?
Yeah.
And that's just, just different questions to ask yourself. Observing is the third one. And so I think this one is a lot of just looking at behaviors of your customers.
Yeah.
What are they doing? Why are they choosing this? Why are they buying this? And asking those kind of questions.
Yeah, Clayton Christensen has that great example of working with a company and finding out why people are buying milkshakes. And the study basically was they found that they were selling a decent amount of milkshakes in the morning for breakfast. And as they looked at it, they interviewed some of the customers that were buying these milkshakes, and they just found that there were people who were looking for something that they could drink and drive with that was somewhat fulfilling for them. It wasn't very healthy, obviously, but maybe better than a.
Are you telling me milkshakes aren't healthy?
Yeah,
Charles?
right. That's one of my favorite things.
Oh gosh.
And so they found that this milkshake was actually something people were drinking for breakfast, and so they kind of created a whole marketing campaign around that to help boost the sales of milkshakes in the morning. And so just by looking at weird things like that, you can find opportunities to grow.
No, that's really interesting. The fourth one is experimenting. So, prototypes, pilot programs. And they talk a little bit about Amazon and how Jeff Bezos, it started as just kind of an online bookstore.
Right.
Then Amazon started selling other things, became this big.
Yeah, no one remembers it was a bookstore back in the day.
And now they're starting to do actual physical bookstores again, which
interesting.
We'll see how that works out.
Well, now they're delivering and have a whole fleet of trucks.
Right. They have they make movies, they make TV shows, they have a whole music platform, they make technology devices.
Yeah. If you're listening to this 5 years from now, I'd be curious. It'd be funny to hear what they're doing.
It might be outdated.
Right.
Yeah.
They're out of business.
So, but that experimenting, and I think, in business we can, it's always interesting to do small little pilots with parts of the organization to see if things work, and then tweak it before we roll it out to the larger organization. And then finally is networking. And I think, I think networking is always just a great thing to do. And this is really both within and outside your company. So you try to meet with people, not necessarily in your function, your department, not even in your industry, and then have conversations and try to learn from people in all aspects of business or life, and then take those ideas and think about how you can innovate.
I always had a good experience doing that. When I was in marketing, I'd go to the local marketing association, in Salt Lake, and generally good presentations, and you'd meet people and see what they were doing and bounce ideas off of them and maybe ask about challenges you had. And it was very enlightening. I always came back with like 5 new ideas of things that I could do differently or improve.
Yeah.
It's really helpful.
And so I think, finally, one of the quotes that I like, it's been attributed to Albert Einstein. I did some research. Turns out, did he ever really say it exactly like this? Probably not, but he said, but it's the significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. So I think it's this notion of, we have to think outside the box. We have to think differently to be able to move on and to progress and to, in a company to hit targets,
Sure.
to hit certain revenue goals, or whatever is your metrics within your company. Might be a retention thing, a hiring thing, or one engagement index.
Today, as the industries are changing, the global economy is so dynamic. You've got to keep changing and learning and innovating to kind of keep up and stay competitive.
Yeah.
Well, excellent. Well, Thomas, thank you very much. Thanks,
Thank
everyone, for joining us today on our podcast, and we look forward to having you join us on a future episode.